Paul Robeson is the ultimate international citizen. He used his gifts first to expand, the art world, but then he moved into just international civil rights. And I hope everyone can really appreciate his full legacy as a Pan-Africanist. But I would say the most important lesson for students to take away from Paul Robeson is that, doing what is right is not always going to be the easy option. So even though it came at a price for Paul, he still, followed his moral compass, and remained that strong rights for civil rights, the strong voice for civil rights around the world.
And the Robeson House is in a position to carry on the legacy of Paul Robeson in terms of his commitment to human rights and to human dignity.
When David was 18 years old, he was found guilty of crimes that he had not committed. He spent the following 38 years incarcerated and ultimately was freed through the work of Centurion, who advocate for the wrongly accused. Released from prison, he had no family and no friends and no place to go. He found a temporary home in the walls of Robeson House where he could live without fear and freedom and with support as he transitioned to normal life.
I believe that the enduring legacy of Paul Robeson is two-pronged. First of all is his cultural legacy, what he gave us in terms of his art, both as a singer, as a stage performer. One of the things that his son said about him is that his father challenged the cultural foundations of racism. And that will be one of the missions of the Paul Robeson House, is to bring that cultural legacy to the forefront. The second legacy that he brought to us, the second prong, is his fierce belief in racial justice. And he spoke with such eloquence and force, and he was able to speak truth to power.
You think of all the great artists that people now think of together. He had more renown than any of them. Even Einstein sat there and said, what a remarkable person. If you want to know who Robeson is, you need to go and see what he wrote. Go to his words and see what he wrote. From November 1950. The road has been long. The road has been hard. It began about as tough as I'd ever had it. In Princeton, New Jersey, a college town of Southern aristocrats.
Hi, I'm Martha Sword, and I am a lifetime Princetonian, member of the Paul Robeson Board, and I'm happy to tell you why I'm so fond of the Paul Robeson House of Princeton. By an unusual coincidence, I was over at the house trying to help clean up and dismantle many years ago, and we were standing talking in the kitchen, and I looked down at my feet and I found a little beautiful rectangle of paper, not disturbed at all, even though it was lying in all the construction. And we picked it up and I opened it up, and it was the bus pass of Paul Robeson's brother William. It was his pass to go to high school in Trenton, because he couldn't go to high school in Princeton because he was black. And right then, something just hooked with me about the Paul Robeson House and why it's important that everyone in town know how valuable this place is and can be in the future.
Well, I wouldn't take nothing a mountain for my The legacy of Paul Robeson is immense. When I think about who he was and what he represents to us today, I have to think about his whole family. I have to think about his father, the Reverend William Drew Robeson, who served as the pastor of Witherspoon Street Presbyterian Church for 21 years, our longest serving pastor. I have to think about his mother, Maria Bustille Robeson, and his family members and how they impacted all of the Princeton community and the legacy of young Paul as an activist, as an advocate, as someone who championed peace and solidarity and resistance, as an actor, as an artist, as one who said, I just want to be African, as one who spoke many languages, as someone who was a scholar and an athlete. When I think of Robeson and the legacy and the Paul Robeson House of Princeton, I think of a legacy of excellence, a legacy of scholarship, a legacy of faith, a legacy of community, a legacy of advocacy, and a legacy that I am proud to be inspired by and seek to represent today.
I am a child of the civil rights movement and of the 60s. And one of the things that disturbed me about that era is, with all of its accomplishments, is that people like Robeson, who did so much in the previous decades to advance the cause of equality throughout the world, he quickly demonstrated excellence in everything that he did. And it serves as an inspiration to all of us who admire and appreciate his efforts, and we want to preserve them so that people will come to recognize how important it was for him to speak out, to sing out, to be very, very strong in his commitment to the rights of people, poor people worldwide, and in particular to his friends and relatives and colleagues who lived here under repressive conditions here in the United States.
The sun and the stars all are ringing, with song rising strong.
The Robeson House will develop programs to combat racial discrimination as it becomes a more mature organization.
But what saved him was the love of his father. He many, many times played in the parlor, sang together, went to church together. And he had the love of people in the community, his relatives and those who took care of him.
But one of the motivations for his interest and his hard work in studying and comprehending and understanding the nuances of languages was to communicate with the working people around the world that he identified with. And one of the ways he wanted to communicate with working people around the world was through folk songs. He wanted to sing the songs of the working people and wanted to sing them in their own languages. And not just, mouth the words. He wanted to understand the language. He wanted to understand the connotations and the meaning and the layers of meaning, what those words and those songs meant to the people that he was singing to. He wanted to understand it.
Everywhere life courses freely broadly, as the Volga's ample waters flow.
reading Grandpa Stops a War, I didn't know too much about Paul Robeson. I always heard his name come up because he was such a big figure in our community, especially for the civil rights movement. But after I read Grandpa Stops a War, I got to know more of a personal and familial effect he had on everyone. He traveled to Spain and he was able to work with frontline workers and sing with them and sing with soldiers that were fighting in the war. And he had such a great effect on the community, and he really just wanted to spread love.